We're going to jump into the Word now. We are in a series. If this is the first time you're here or the first time you've been here in a minute, we're in a series that is called More Than Just Rules. More Than Just Rules. And in this series, we've actually been dissecting and talking about the 10 Commandments. And something I've said over and over and over in these weeks is that they are the 10 Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. Okay? The 10 Commandments, not the 10 suggestions. So let's list them out real quick. So commandment number 1, we shall have no other gods before me, right? It talks about having no graven images, no idols. Do not take the name of the Lord in vain. Keep the Sabbath holy. Honor your father and your mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. In other words, do not lie and do not covet. These are the 10 Commandments. And the first 3, no other gods before me. No idols. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. They're really talking about that relationship with the Lord. And today, we're going to break down commandment number 4, which is to keep the Sabbath holy. So go with me to the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus, by the way, as you look for the book of Exodus, second book of the Bible, I want to tell you in my personal opinion, my personal estimation, I do not have any data to back this up, just conversations with a lot of people in my years of life. This is the most violated commandment by Christians. This is my estimation, this is the most violated commandment. Because we're always so busy. And we find that we wear as a badge of honor in today's society that we don't take any time off and that we'll rest when we're dead. Don't we say that all? I'll rest when I'm dead. Without realizing we're going to get there a lot sooner than we think if we don't do what this says. So look at Exodus chapter 20, starting in verse number 8. Here's another little bit of a tidbit trivia information, if you would. This is the longest commandment. If you count all 10 of the commandments, how many words they're given to it in the description, this is the longest one. And this is what it says. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. You or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who lives within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. I find it very interesting that the Lord starts this commandment with remember. Remember. See, because we so quickly forget. And we are told, remember, you think about all the other ones, have no other gods before me. Don't make any idols. Don't use my name in vain. They're all with these don'ts. And this one is remember. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Now, one of our values at our church is authenticity, so I'm going to be real. I have struggled with Sabbathing, especially early on in my years of ministry. I want to say it probably was about 3 years where I did not rest. I did not Sabbath. And part of it was pride. And I'm just going to be real and authentic with y'all. So I went full-time into ministry, and I was working for the Lord in ministry. And my wife was an administrator at a school. And I would take my day that was going to be my Sabbath day, because if you didn't know this, Sunday for me is a work day. I am the pastor of this church. I work for the church. And this for me today is a work day. Many of you are off today. Many of you today is your Sabbath day. So I would work on Sunday, and I would say, I'm going to take Monday as my day of Sabbath, as my day of rest. And I would sit down, and I would sit on my couch, and then I would have this little voice. You remember Tom and Jerry, little voice? I had this little voice of you lazy bum. Your wife is at a school working, and you're just sitting here in the couch. What do you do? And so I would find, no, I got to work. I got to do something. If I couldn't figure out something to do for the church, I would go meet her at her school and help at the school. I would sub, I would train, teach, I would do stuff because I felt my humanity side. How are you going to rest when she's working? And so I went about 3 years in this enslavement until the Lord really hit me upside the head and said, you're violating something that I have instructed. And I want us to understand something this morning. God instituted Sabbath way before the 10 Commandments. As a matter of fact, if you go to Genesis, we know Genesis, creation story, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He made in day one, he made the earth, he made the heavens, he made the waters, he separated it, he made the fish, the birds, the trees, all these different things. And if you go to Genesis chapter 2, verse number 1 of Genesis chapter 2, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them, and on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done at creation. Now, God doesn't get tired. What was he doing? He was instituting a principle that we are to follow. He was instituting a principle that we have to understand. Sabbath was established by God at creation. What does it mean to Sabbath? It comes from the word Shabbat, which means to cease, to end your work. And so it looks a little different for each of us in this room. So for example, if you are an electrician and you've got your electrical company, or you work for somebody, you work for FPL, whatever the case might be, one day a week, you've got to cease doing your job as an electrician. If you're a teacher, one day a week, you cease the lesson planning, the grading, the different things. If you have whatever it is, your job. Students, let me talk to you for a second. You have a job. It's called school. I mean, I don't know how they talk about it in your household. In my household, we talk to our children about the fact that their responsibility is school. And so going into the weekend, obviously we're in summer right now, but going into the weekend during the school year, I will ask them, what work do you have that's due on Monday? Which day are you Sabbathing, Saturday or Sunday? Are you going to rest from your schoolwork on Saturday or on Sunday? What does that mean? You've got to be intentional on knowing that if there's a project that's due 3 Mondays from now, don't wait till the Friday right before it's due to start it. That then you got to do it all day Saturday and all day Sunday, right? That works for us grown-ups too. And so what is it? We've got to understand, we've got to stop. We have to rest. We have to cease. We have to end, because Sabbath was established by God. If you go to the book of Mark, chapter number 2, Mark chapter 2, I'll tell you what's going on here. The Pharisees, they're looking at Jesus and they're telling him, hey, your disciples are profaning the Sabbath because they grabbed some grain as they were walking through the field. And in Mark chapter 2, verse 27, as Jesus is replying to these people, he looks at them and this is what he says. Mark 2, verse number 27. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. The next verse says, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. So what do I want us to understand this morning? If you're taking notes, you can jot it down. The Sabbath is a gift from God. It's a gift from God. And by the way, it's not a reward for working hard. It is you rest and get refilled in order to be able to do what God has called you to do. Anybody here ever gone on a road trip? Raise your hand. Have you ever gone, even if you've driven to Orlando? Okay, what do we do before we get on that turnpike? We gas up, don't we? Like I remember one time, I was like, we drive a Sienna. It gets like 37 miles to the gallon. Thank you, Jesus. And we were like about, I don't know, we had a good amount. And I was like, you know what? We're in a hurry. We're in a rush. I'm just going to gas up on the turnpike in St. Lucie, right? Like halfway there, I'll gas up on the thing. And I'm driving up there, and then I started getting nervous. Because I was like, this station ain't getting here. And the needle's going down. See, I was like, I will stretch it, right? And I thank the Lord we didn't run out of gas. But what did I learn from it? We got to make sure we gas up before we go. And Sabbathing is like that. We're gassing up for the rest of the things. It is a time where we are refreshing. It is a gift that God has given us. By the way, we're called by God to work. We are called by God to work. That's a whole preaching we can do there. The Bible talks about if you don't work, don't eat. And they're living in a time right now where people don't want to work. Everybody wants to be an influencer and get money from their YouTube clicks and their YouTube videos. Bro, go get a job. Work. Everybody wants to be their own boss. And many of the people that I've spoken to want to be their own boss for this reason. They don't know how to submit to authority. And they just want to wake up whenever they want, do whatever they want, and have people pay for everything. Go get a job and then have a Sabbath. There's some people that are trying to live in an eternal Sabbath. And I'm not talking about my retired folk before Don tells me. I had somebody after first service, I had another gentleman who was here. He's retired, and he looked at me. He looked and he says, so for the retired folk, what do I do? And I said, this is what you got to do. This is what Don tells me all the time. I'm going to go get a part-time job and say I only want to work 1 day a week, and that's going to be my Sabbath. And anyways, it's a joke, okay? Sabbath is a gift from God. It's a gift. And many believers are not using the gift that God has given them. And we're wondering why we're so chronically exhausted and tired and fatigued. And here's the truth. We're busier than ever before. Can we be honest in here for a minute? How many of you have your work email or your school email tied to your phones? Anybody here? Raise your hands if you have your phone. Yeah. And so what happens? Even on my day off, I check the phone and there it is, that little notification. And there it is, and now I go look at it, and it's like, oh, no, today's my day off. I'm not working today, but yeah, right. Your mind starts thinking about the meeting you're going to need to have when you go back to work. You start thinking about the contract that failed. You start thinking about the thing, and all of a sudden, you're back at the work. We've got to disconnect and have a day where we are legitimately accepting this gift from God and just resting. Sabbath is rest. It's rest. It's resting in God and refilling from God. It's resting in Him. I read a book one time that was talking about the fact that each of us have 4 tanks, and the way they were describing it. 4 tanks. A mental tank, an emotional tank, a physical tank, and a spiritual tank. And here's the reality. We've got to understand what are the things that fill us in these different areas, and on our Sabbath day, spend extra time with God in His presence and doing the things that fill you up. So, for example, I gave this example in first service. I was having a conversation with Pastor Ibai a couple years ago, and I was talking about, for me, especially on my Sabbath day, I want to go out on the water. I want to go out on my paddleboard. I don't do it often enough. I want to go out there. I relax in the water. It refreshes me. It's something completely different. And she said, not me. I don't do that water stuff. That would stress me out. My wife and I are different. My wife can get a drawer that is all discombobulated and disorganized and pull everything out to organize it, and she is so relaxed. You tell me organize a drawer, and I start sweating bullets. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not relaxing for me. So here's the question. What does fill your cup? What has God created you? How has He created you? With what is it that fills you? And we've got to find that rest in the Lord. Rest in Him. And it's not one of the points, but I want to talk about it. To Sabbath requires faith. Because many times we think, well, no, I can't disconnect because what if that contract fails? What if they need to get a hold of me because they need one more document to get to closing? Hey, you know what? It'll happen tomorrow. And when you are Sabbathing and resting on God, He will take care of everything that you need. But it's faith. In the same way that being a tither requires faith. Because what is tithing? It is returning to God what is His. It's believing that you, on 90% of whatever came into you, because you return to God that 10, will do better and more than if you kept all 100. You know what happens with a farmer that eats all of their seed? They don't get another harvest. A farmer has to get some of that seed and put it back into the ground. Why? So that the fruit can grow again. And in the same way, we think, no, I can't rest. I got to keep going and going and going and push through and press through because, the Bible says that God helps those who help themselves. That's not a verse. That's not scriptural. But have you ever heard that before? I've had believers tell me, no, I can't take a day off. God helps those who help themselves. What is that? First made up, verse 2? You're like, it ain't a verse. We got to trust in God and take a day where we cease from doing whatever is our work, whatever it is that we do. We've got to rest. We've got to rest in Him. I wrote this thought down. Sabbath is to be kept, not skipped. Sabbath is to be kept, not skipped. Now, our church, I say the vision week after week, and we talk about our values. And one of our values is to refresh. It's about the Sabbath. And we say it this way, even in the busy seasons. And it goes from this verse in Exodus chapter 34. Go back to Exodus and go to chapter 34. And in Exodus chapter 34, God is revisiting He's revisiting the covenant with them. And they're going over all the things. This is after Moses had torn up the tablets, and God gives them the new tablets. And he's talking about all the different things here in Exodus 34. And he gets down to verse 21, and it says, 6 days you shall work, but on the seventh day you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest time you shall rest. In plowing time and in harvest time you shall rest. Now, I don't know that we have anybody at our church that's a farmer for a living. Anybody here farmer for a living and I didn't know? No, I don't think we have any farmers in the house. Okay, I'm not a farmer either. But I know, you're a farmer? Oh, okay, so you can answer me a little bit. Okay, so what is the busiest time for the farmer is tilling the ground, preparing the ground, and putting the seed. Once the seed's in the ground, now you got to water it, but you're going to wait for the seed to do its job. And then the next super busy time is when the harvest comes out, isn't it? Like, any of you ever gone to Nosberry Farm and picked some strawberries? You got to get up there, you're in there, you're pulling out the strawberries. A few years ago, we were on a road trip, and we drove through Alabama, and there was a blueberry farm, and it was blueberry season, so we stopped in to pick blueberries. Bro, that was hard work. We were walking around with this basket trying to find the little things and get them blueberries and do all the different things. The planting time and the harvest time, that's the hardest time. So God is talking to the children of Israel, and he says, in your plowing season and your harvest season, you still got a Sabbath. So what is God telling you? Even in your busy season. Listen, you're an accountant. Yeah, we just passed that deadline, but next year, even if you're an accountant and you got all the taxes to do for everybody, one day a week, you got to give it time to God and take your time of rest. Whatever it is that you and I do, even in the busy seasons, we've got to take a day where we cease from the work and we rest in him. It is a gift that he has given us. It is something that he has given us. It is to be kept, not skipped. And I'm telling you, I am guilty. As a matter of fact, my dad's sitting right there. After the picnic yesterday, we finished picking up. We were doing all this stuff, and I'm just sitting there, and we're sitting outside. And he's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, no, I'm going to go over my notes for tomorrow and all these things. He's like, oh, what are you preaching out tomorrow? I was like, no, commandment number 4, the Sabbath. He said, you're going to talk about rest? You're always doing something. And I said, you're right, but I've gotten to a place in my life where I've learned that I have to be intentional on taking that time. Because if not, I'm violating what God has given me and commanded me to do. And we're all guilty of, I'll rest later. There's so many studies done on what rest does to the body and to the individual. As a matter of fact, I read a study last year that was talking about how they followed these two groups of people, some that would Sabbath and some that wouldn't. And they followed them for years. And they found out that on average, the person that would every single week take a day to rest and not work lived from 5 to 7 years longer than all the other ones who did not work. Or sorry, that wouldn't take a day off. And then they started doing the math calculations. How many years it was that those individuals had worked through their Sabbath. And basically, the people that were dying 5 to 7 years less or faster were people that didn't Sabbath. And those that lived longer, the years of rest, the weeks of rest, it's what it added up. You're going to pay the piper. You're going to. And some of us, we think, oh, no, it's not going to catch up with me. I'm good. I'm young. No, learn it now and begin to Sabbath. God takes it so seriously that the children of Israel, when they violated Sabbathing and giving the land Sabbath, the Bible says for 490 years, they profaned the Sabbath and they would not Sabbath and they wouldn't give the land the Sabbath. They went slaves to Babylon for 70 years so that the land would have its Sabbath. God takes it that serious. And you and I, we need to begin to say, I'm going to be intentional on taking my day of rest, on preparing for it, on actually resting. It has to be kept, not skipped. I wrote this other thought down as well. Sabbath is not a catch-up day. It's not a catch-up day. What do I mean by that? Again, I'm guilty of this. Oh, on my day off, on my Sabbath, I'll catch up with all the other things. It's just 5 minutes. I'm going to catch up on my email. I'm going to do this. And here I am trying to catch up on all the other things I hadn't done. I hadn't touched the dishes in a week. I'm going to catch up on my Sabbath day. And they're doing dishes for 4 hours. I'm kidding, right? Exaggerating. But you get the point. It's not a catch-up day. It's not I didn't sleep every day this week, so all I'm going to do is sleep all day long on my Sabbath to catch up on my sleep. No. It's not a catch-up day. It's something that we're continually doing. It is something that we got to look and say, I will not violate this commandment. You know what's funny? We don't ask people to steal. We don't ask people, right? It's like, I don't steal. We don't ask people to lie, right? Because we don't lie. I don't go up to you like, hey, go cheat on your wife, kind of thing, because it's adultery. We're not going to do that, right? Why do we so flippantly and easily accept breaking the day of rest? It's one of the 10. And he says, remember. Put it at the forefront that we've got to take a day where we rest. Another thing I want to talk about this morning is this. Sabbath is a sign. Sabbath is a sign. A sign to who? To the world that you trust in God. The Sabbath is a sign to the world that you trust in God. In the book of Nehemiah, it talks about the walls having been torn down and the gates being broken. Nehemiah goes and he repairs all the breaches. He repairs all the things with all the children of Israel. And then he goes back to the king, and when he comes back, he finds that on the Sabbath day, the gates were open, the merchants from other countries were there, and they were buying and trading. And Nehemiah says, what you all doing? Close these gates right now. This is the Sabbath day. You cannot profane it like the children of old did. And so then the following week, the gates were closed, and all the merchants came again. And Nehemiah went out there and said, I'm about to bust you all up if you don't leave or if you keep coming back. This is what we do on this day. We Sabbath. Now, in different faiths or denominations, if you would, for example, Seventh-day Adventists, they adhere to it has to be Saturday. That is the day of rest. It's why Seventh-day Adventists on Saturdays, they don't work. It's when they have service and all of that. In Judaism, it is actually from Friday at sundown until Saturday at sundown because they do it in the evening. The day starts for them in the evening. We are under the new covenant, but Jesus said he didn't abolish the law. He fulfilled the law. So it's not for us about which is the day of the week. It's just a matter that you have to do a day of the week. So it's not about, it has to be Saturday. It has to be Sunday. It just has to happen. One day a week where you take your day, that in that day you refill, You spend extra time with God, and you don't do whatever it is that is your work. Can emergencies happen? Absolutely. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus is talking about the Sabbath. He says, hey, which one of y'all, if your donkey doesn't fall in a hole on the Sabbath day, isn't going to go out there and get the donkey out? Right? An emergency can happen. Something can happen. But it can't happen every single week. We've got to understand and put the parameters and the safeguards to intentionally Sabbath. Listen, don't be ashamed to tell people this is my Sabbath day. That's a culture we've built here. And I have a ton of my leaders or people they'll reach out to me because for me, I take it depends on the week. I'll vary it depending on what I got going on that week. Sometimes I'll do Monday, sometimes I'll do Wednesday. I found that Mondays didn't work well for me. And I'm going to explain to you why. I'm just being honest, right? Because this is how I'm discerning with. I found that if I rested on Monday, it was great. I was replenished. But guess what? By Sunday, when I needed to preach 2 times, I came into Sunday tired. So in the last year, I shifted where I tend to Sabbath on either Thursday or Friday if I can. That's what I try to do. Why? So that I can enter the week full as opposed to get here on a Sunday morning already depleted. Does that make sense? So what is it that works for you in your schedule? But the key is pick a day and adhere to the day and tell people, hey, no, today's my Sabbath. I'm resting. I'm spending time with God. I'm spending time with my family. Look at what Scripture says, okay? I want you to go to Exodus chapter 16. In Exodus 16, it's when the Lord started giving manna or bread from heaven to the children of Israel. You guys remember that story? Every single day they would walk outside. They were supposed to pull up an omer of the manna. And then Moses told them, only get 1 omer, what each person needs. Do not get any more than for 1 day. And the people that disobeyed and got extra, it says that the manna got stinky and full of worms. But then all of a sudden, this is where we are in Exodus 16. He says to them in verse 22, on the 6th day, gather twice as much, 2 omers. And when all the leaders of the congregation and told Moses, he said to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Tomorrow is a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over lay aside and keep it till the morning. The only day they were supposed to collect 2 days' worth was on that 6th day. This is what they were doing. They were preparing to rest. They were preparing to rest. Do you ever notice that it says that Jesus was killed when he was crucified? It was the day of preparation. And he was actually then put into the grave before the day of preparation ended, which means Friday before sundown. Everybody was able to still have their day of rest, if you would. So when you think about, when Scripture talks about the day of preparation, here's the question. What are we doing to prepare for our day of rest? I read a book last year that I highly recommend if you want to learn more about Sabbath. It is called Subversive Sabbath. Subversive Sabbath. Very, very good. I encourage you to read this book. And in this book, one of the things that really hit me was this gentleman talking about preparing to Sabbath. And I started applying that in my life. What can I do to prepare for the day that I'm going to rest? So, for example, if I know that I'm going to take Saturday as an example, my kids are going to be off, my wife is off, we're going to Sabbath as a family on Saturday. I'm going to do everything within my power that by Friday, hampers are empty, dishes are clean, all these things are done so that we can truly just be. Spend time with the Lord and spend time with the family. Because what happens many times, again, guilty. You can point at me and say, guilty, I've done this. It's my Sabbath day, and on my Sabbath day, 4 loads of laundry, clean the bathroom, mop the floors, do the thing, and at the end of the day, I should have just worked. I'm more tired because none of that fills my cup. Mopping ain't fun. At least not for me. Maybe for you it is. It don't fill my cup. So I learned I'm going to start preparing for my Sabbath day. I'm going to prepare for it. I'm going to try to, I'm not going to do my groceries on my Sabbath day. I'm going to try to have it done ahead of time. I'm not saying that I won't cook on my Sabbath day. Listen, it's not a religious thing. It's not about religiosity. There are people that they've made it about religiosity, right? Like, so for example, you ever gone to Miami Beach, an area that's full of Jews during a Sabbath day? Okay? The crosswalks are programmed for a certain amount of time. As a matter of fact, they hire Florida Highway Patrol officers to stand at the crosswalks and stop traffic so that Jews don't have to press the button, because that would be considered work for them. No, go ask a Highway Patrol officer about it. I'm not making this up. You go to a building that's predominantly Jewish, and on the Sabbath day, the elevator is programmed to stop at every floor because pressing the button could be considered work. That is taking what God gave as a gift to a religious extreme that now has become burdensome, and where's the rest in that? You got to be thinking about, like, is this work? Is that work? No. I have my things ready. I prepare. But it's not legalism, because it's supposed to be rest. It's supposed to be refilling. It's supposed to be refreshing. But we've got to make a point to intentionally set aside the time to Sabbath. Because if you don't intentionally set aside the time, guess what? We don't do it. I'm guilty if I don't intentionally set aside the time. And then sometimes we do it. Like, I'll give you an example in my house, because my wife and I have somewhat of a conflict schedule, right? She works Monday through Friday at the school. I don't, right? And so now in the summer, she's actually off on Fridays, so I try to make sure that I'm going to do my Sabbath on Friday so we can Sabbath together. So here we are. We're in the house talking a couple weeks ago. We're getting ready for VBS. If you didn't know, VBS is a lot of work, okay? To get everything ready, to get all the lessons. As a matter of fact, these lessons, like, she wrote all the lessons that the kids taught. It's a lot of work. And so as we're gearing up that couple of weeks before VBS, I asked her, I was like, hey, I'm scheduled to Sabbath on Friday. Are you going to be working on VBS Friday where you're going to need help? Because if you're going to be working Friday and I'm going to be drawn in to help work on Friday, I'm going to stop Thursday. That's a conversation we had. And you can ask my wife. That's a conversation we had, because I've learned that if I don't guard it, if I don't protect it, I'll work right through it. Because I'm a hard worker. I'm diligent. I don't do lazy. I will start, and we will work through until we get it done. And so I will always find something I can do. Another video we can edit, another person I can visit, another phone call I can make. I will always find something. If I'm not intentional to say, nope, phone's on do not disturb, not answering, not doing. Because today's my day with God to refill, to refresh. And it's not a religious experience. God gave you this gift. The question is, do we use it? Are we doing it? Society wears as a badge of honor, I'm just busy all the time and I don't work. I don't rest. I got this. Nobody outworks me. I'm there, sun up to sundown. That's not scriptural. We need to prepare for the Sabbath, and that is a key to keeping the Sabbath. As the worship team comes to the altar, this is where I want to finish with. Let's be intentional on keeping the Sabbath. Let's be intentional. Let's put it on our calendar. This is my rest day. As a matter of fact, those of you that serve in ministries here at 3W Church, there's some people that are always like, oh, I'll do every single week. And I say, absolutely not. I want you to be able to come to church and just sit and just receive. It's not, you're not on every week. That's not the way it works. We Sabbath. We rest. We do these things. I'm here, and I try to practice this. I don't preach every single Sunday. There's Sundays I don't preach, right? I try on average 10 to 12 Sundays a year. It's another voice that is on this altar. I'm here. I'm taking notes. I'm listening. I'm receiving from whoever is at the altar. This is holy ground. It's an altar. It's not a stage. It's an altar. And whoever's here declaring the word of God, I can sit and receive from too. So I want to model to you as well. What do we do? What can I get? How do I learn? And so I challenge you, be intentional. Be intentional. How am I going to Sabbath? How am I going to rest? And I know we joked about those that are retired, but let's be real. Let's talk about that for a second. One day a week where there's no chores that need to get done. That you don't got to do your laundry and your cleaning and your thing, because that's our Sabbath day. It's our extra day. It's our refilling day. I don't do lawn on that day. I don't do this on that day. That is my day where I spend it with God, where I spend it with my family. And parents, let's teach it to our children. So this is what I want you to do. I want to invite you to stand to your feet. We're going to begin to worship, and I want you to talk to the Lord. And some of us in this place, the Lord has already been hammering us while we were listening to the message about, hey, you got to honor the Sabbath. So as we're now in this time of worship, start to pray and ask the Lord, what things need to change? What do I need to do? How do I put it on my calendar? What do I need to do to be intentional with it? What do I have to say no to? How do I do it where I disconnect my email from the work so I'm not working 24 hours a day, where I'm actually doing my moments? I work hard when I'm at work, but I'm with my family when I'm at home. Let the Lord minister to your heart so that you can be intentional about Sabbath.